The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Finance Department welcomes the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council's inclusion of 5 fiscal and economic reforms for legislative approval within the year. Among these measures are the Public-Private Partnerships Bill, the ease of paying taxes to enhance tax compliance, and the automatic income classification of local government units. Also included are reforms in real property valuation and assessment, as well as the creation of a sustainable pension framework for military and uniformed personnel. Finance Chief Ben Diokno adds that imposing value-added tax on digital transactions will help with the government's revenue collection.
Ang rason nun is fairness. Kasi kung binili mo sa regular store, meron kang tax. Pag binili mo sa online, wala kang tax. Di ba? Hindi naman fair yun, di ba? In the first place, sino nakakabili sa online? Siguro yung mga nakakahanap ng konti sa buhay.
Secretary Diokno also believes that the Philippine government debt is still, quote, manageable. This as the government debt ballooned to 14.1 trillion pesos in May. Diokno says this is still fine, as the debt to GDP ratio still stands at 60.9%. The finance chief also explained that it was necessary for the government to borrow funds due to the impact of the pandemic.
Now, let me reiterate that the correct metric in looking at the public debt is not the absolute level of debt. Rather, it is the public debt as a percent of GDP. It also matters how the debt is used. It makes a lot of difference if the debt is used for public capital investment and productivity-enhancing measures rather than government consumption. For example, higher salaries for public sector workers.
Among these so-called manageable debts is the newly minted $600 million loan agreement signed by the government and World Bank on July 17. The loan is for the Philippine Rural Development Project Scale-Up, geared towards transforming agriculture into a modernized and industrialized sector. The project aims to help farmers and fishermen gain better access to markets, earn more money from chosen agricultural and fishery industries, and enhance efficiency within the food supply chain. It will cover 16 regions, focusing on areas where about half of the Philippines' agriculture and fisheries population resides. As of July, the total World Bank official development assistance loan and grant commitments amount to nearly $8 billion. The government is confident that the El Nino won't affect the country's food supply and economy, at least for this year. Socioeconomic Planning Undersecretary Rosemary Edilon noted that local farmers are finished irrigating their farm fields. The water allocation for irrigation has been reduced as the level in Angat Dam continues to drop.
Tapos na mag-irrigate yung ating mga kababayan na magsasaka, papunta na sila doon sa part na pinapatuyo na talaga nila. So hindi pa rin siya makakaapekto talaga sa ngayon.
Still, Edilon warned the public against complacency, saying that everyone should prepare for the impending effects of the phenomenon. El Nino is expected to persist until the first half of 2024.
Yung preparasyon para doon, kailangan ngayon nagsisimula na.
Kung halimbawa may prepare natin ng maayos, hindi kami nakakakita ng malaking negative impact dito sa inflation or sa economy.
A reminder from the National Irrigation Administration: don't waste rice. The agency says the El Nino phenomenon poses a risk to the country's rice supply. The NIA tells the public to take or cook only what they can consume. The NIA also reminds local governments to take the necessary steps to ensure the El Nino will have minimal effect on their respective areas. The Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food Incorporated says about 75% of the country's rice production comes from irrigated areas. Should water supply for irrigation be cut, lower rice production is expected to be felt early next year. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. is set to meet with local chicken and pork producers at the palace later today to listen to their concerns. Among the issues to be discussed, the rampant smuggling and flooding of imported meat in the market. The United Broiler Raisers Association says this is the reason local chicken and pork raisers are already suffering losses. They added that the local industry is at risk of collapse if the president does not address the problem. The group is also facing issues with declining demand for chicken and eggs, as fewer people are buying them in markets, which they say is likely due to the rising prices of rice. Diversified engineering conglomerate DMCI Holdings reaps multiple recognitions at the recent 13 Asian Excellence Awards in Hong Kong, namely Best CEO, Best CFO, Best Investor Relations, Professional, and Best Investor Relations Company. Thought Leaders with Kathy Yang caught up with the chairman, president, and CEO of DMCI Holdings, Isidro Cid Consunji, who started by sharing his vision for the future with his initial foray into agriculture.
We just signed an agreement with Marubeni for a carbon credit project in southern Negros. So we're working now with DNR, and hopefully we get our IFMA for 40,000 hectares on or before the end of this year. We're currently working with UP Los Baños, Department of Forestry, and to regrow the denuded areas in southern Negros.
That is interesting. You're getting into something you hadn't gone into when you were young. It leads us now to agriculture.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I mean, you have a family business in agriculture in Zamboanga, but it's something that you really never took up as you were growing the construction business.
Well, we think this is an opportunity for CSR as well as for the environment, because that area is economically deprived. Walang masyadong job opportunities. So, and it's also denuded. But it's good for African palm oil, and I think it's good for reforestation.
It's quite exciting because when you think of it, you have one of the most modern coal mines in the Philippines, and the mining business is really a revenue generator. So how do you see both coming together in the way that carbon credits try to ease out maybe the carbon emissions? What are you seeing going forward in, say, the next 5 years?
Well, I think it probably will offset some of the carbon emissions that we have in our fossil fuel power plants and our coal mining. Hopefully that will be offset by carbon credits we can generate in our agriculture. We think that if we're successful, hopefully other companies will replicate what we're trying to do and help bring back more forests in the denuded areas.
Have you done up the numbers as to what kind of offsetting could happen and over what time period?
Well,
especially for Semirara Coal and Mine.
In a few months, we'll probably get some feedback from them. Well, Mindanao especially has been quite good for palm oil. I think the yields that we're getting in Mindanao is comparable to yields getting in Indonesia and Malaysia. And the Philippines import 92% of its vegetable oil requirement, palm oil requirement. I don't see any reason why we cannot minimize the importation and provide employment to our people as well in the countryside.
So do you think agriculture is the next biggest industry in, say, the next 5 years?
We're going to try. We don't know whether we're going to succeed, but we'll probably do our best.
But it's interesting that a leader like yourself in the construction business would say that agriculture might be the next big thing.
Well, it's not really for, the main emphasis is probably not going to be very highly profitable, but I don't think it's going to be a losing venture, and the yield should be adequate to make the business sustainable. And I think the more important thing is providing, economic opportunities in the countryside, as well as good for the environment.
Catch the full interview with Cid Consunji on Thought Leaders with Kathy Yang tomorrow, 9:30 p.m. only here on One News. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.